What's up, guys? Welcome back to more Reddit stories about entitled people, crazy people, and everything in between. Hope you're all doing awesome today. Be sure to subscribe if you're new here, and as usual, we're getting right into today's Reddit posts. Strange guy in a place he had absolutely no reason to be. When I was in primary school, we used to go on school trips to a place called Merchants Hill in Surrey, UK. Merchants Hill is an adventure center that mainly caters to schools. They have activities like climbing, orienteering, canoeing, etc., and they had dorms to stay in. We usually went for 4 to 5 days. The place sits on 45 acres of land, and there's no reason to be there other than the above. I believe they also have a part for adults for team building trips and stuff like that, but they're not together, so we'd only ever see employees or sometimes kids from a different school while there. One evening, we were camping out for the night. A Merchants Hill employee led us to the camping area at about 7 p.m., helped show us all how to set up tents and start a fire, then left for the night, leaving us in the care of our 2 teachers from school. We had a fire going and we're all sitting around it on logs that were placed around the fire area. We were singing songs and talking and just being kids as it got darker. After a while, a couple of us heard the sounds of someone approaching, but I thought nothing of it, probably just an employee checking in. Suddenly, this guy appears out of the darkness and loudly says, "You shouldn't be here." Everyone whips their head around to see who it is, and this guy's just standing there. He's a big guy and looked homeless, in that he had a big scraggly beard and hair, but he's wearing a suit with Wellington boots and is holding a plastic bag. One of our teachers says to the guy, "It's okay, we're booked in for a few days. We're from this school." The guy looks around for a few seconds, like he's checking behind himself, then repeats, "You shouldn't be here," but louder. The male teacher that was with us jumps up and positions himself between the guy and us kids very quickly, and repeats that we are supposed to be here and asks the man who he is, while at the same time grabbing him by the arm to sort of lead him away. The strange guy pulls his arm away aggressively, then walks off real quickly without saying another word. A bit later, all the kids are in their tents, 2 to a tent. The teachers are still sat outside, probably enjoying some child-free time, when we hear some shouting. It sounded to me like, "Go, go, get out." A few of us opened our tents, and I could just about see the same guy standing there in the darkness. Our teacher is already right by the guy at that point, and shouts at him to leave, but the guy's just looking at him, so the teacher starts to gently push him back away from us, and is saying something to the guy while doing so. They disappear into the darkness of the surrounding area for maybe 30 seconds. Then my teacher comes back and with a look of urgency says, "We're going back to the dorms right now." No idea what was said, but my teacher's whole demeanor changed. We all leave our tents pitched and walk the 10 minutes or so back to the dorms by torchlight. Once we're in the dorm, the teacher goes off to speak to an employee, and about 15 minutes later, we see a police car pull up by the reception area, and the police talk to my teacher. That guy had absolutely no reason to be on that 45 acres of land. Looking back, he probably had mental health issues, but he scared the crap out of us, and thinking of it still makes me feel a little uneasy. Calling the police on landscapers. I live in a small foresty New England town. Our residential roads are overly narrow in some places. Pair this with blind curves and hills, it's honestly scary to drive sometimes. My significant other and I would regularly vent to each other about landscapers parking on the road, entirely blocking the already tight lanes. It drives us crazy and feels like playing Russian roulette every time you're forced into the oncoming traffic lane. Will there be another car there? Have they slowed down? Who knows? Just hope for the best. Some people aren't so lucky. During the landscaping months, there's regularly head-on collisions. Almost all of them involve a vehicle blocking the road. They're typically slow-speed crashes. Thankfully, people do tend to slow down, even if it isn't their lane being cut off. I was chatting with a local police officer and I brought up why the landscapers are allowed to park like that, especially since we have so many accidents. He immediately told me that it is illegal. They do not have permission and do get ticketed if a patrol spots them. It was suggested that if I can, report it. So I have been, often. Funnily enough, it has been working, at least on the stretch I drive regularly. On 2 occasions I passed in the opposite direction coming back from errands to witness a police response with my own eyes. Bonus, with another officer there to wave people through safely while it was being dealt with. Yay, I didn't feel like I might die. Yesterday, I overheard a lady in the grocery store complaining about being given a talking to from the police for having the landscapers park on the road instead of her driveway. She and the other women with her felt that it was an overstep of policing and that they shouldn't have their driveway blocked the whole time the landscapers are at their houses. It should be noted that every single house on this road has a long driveway. Most are at least 50 feet to the garage, if you can even see the house from the road. These aren't buildings right on the curb with room only for a single car. I thought it was awfully selfish of them to think that way, and weird to discuss in public like that, so I brought it up during a family video call that night. My parents and a cousin with similar roads agreed with me, but my city/suburb dwelling relatives got mad. They said I was punishing the poor working folk, and if I must stick my nose in their business, I should be going to the homeowner or workers to ask them to move, instead of the nuclear option. I feel that this is a wildly bad idea. I already know the opinion of at least some of the homeowners. Heck, I might have the police called on me for trespassing. Fake HOA president goes to jail. I live in a small town in the deep south. I have lived on this corner in my neighborhood for over 25 years. In the last 5 years or so, my neighborhood has really been coming up with very nice new construction. My house was very old and worn out, so in 2021 I tore it down and built a new one in its place. I just moved back in 4 months ago. I am recently retired local law enforcement, and I'm enjoying some well-deserved rest. Last week I was enjoying watching some reruns on my sofa when my doorbell rang. I quickly checked the camera and saw a white SUV parked out on the street, and some middle-aged woman I had never seen before standing at my door. I opened the door to greet her. She introduced herself as Karen, the president of the HOA. I just looked at her. She said she hadn't heard from me about my HOA dues. She said she sent me a couple of letters, then tried my door a few times. I just grinned. I told her I received the letters but threw them away thinking it was a scam. There is no homeowners association. Never has been and never will be. Clearly, she didn't realize that I am the same guy who lived in the old white cracker house on the same corner. She noticed my fairly thick southern accent and started talking down to me, like I was some kind of ignorant bumpkin. Through her condescending smile, she told me that since I am new to the neighborhood, I obviously didn't understand how things work here, and if I didn't bring my delinquent HOA dues up to current, she would put a lien against my home, and if I still refused to pay, she could take my house. Then she gave me that arrogant smile again and asked if I could afford to lose my home over a few missed payments. The pleasantness left my face, and I moved into that deep, serious voice I developed early in my police career. You just threatened to take my home through illegal means. You are trespassing on my property. You will leave now. If you ever return, I will shoot you where you stand. She started to say something, but I leaned towards her and continued. I am not threatening you. I am telling you. If you ever step foot on my property again, I will put several holes through your body. You will die, right here in front of my door. Now leave. Obviously, I am not going to shoot some unarmed woman, but she didn't know that. The seriousness of my voice did the trick and frightened her away. She stumbled backwards and very quickly walked to her SUV. I figured she would call the police, so I sat there watching the camera. I could see her sitting in her SUV talking on the phone. Sure enough, about 5 minutes later, a local PD arrived. Did I mention that I am retired local law enforcement? Many of the local guys trained with me back in the day when I was still in uniform, and most all of them worked with me when I was a department analyst. Yeah, they all know me and know that this is my house. As I watched the camera, I saw the cop get out of his car. It was a friend. Let's call him Bob. I watched as he stood out in the street talking to the frantic Karen. I can only imagine what she was telling him. As I saw him start to approach the house, I stepped outside. Karen began to follow him up my driveway, but I pointed and told her she was not allowed on my property and now get. Bob turned to tell her to stay back, but my little now get statement infuriated her, which was the point. She tried to push past Bob, but he grabbed her arm to stop her. She turned and shouted at him to let her go, then slapped Bob in the face. That ended about as well as you'd imagine. Still holding her arm, Bob maneuvered her down on my driveway and handcuffed her. She was still screaming some rather rude things. By now, I was out by the street with them. I gave Bob a cute smile and asked him if that hurt. He gave me a nasty look and tried not to laugh. All of this commotion had the neighbors out as well. One of the newer neighbors came up to me to ask what was going on with the HOA lady. HOA lady? I asked him to clarify. He said that when he moved in around 8 months ago, she had introduced herself as the HOA president and had been paying HOA dues to her ever since. Bob overheard this and gave me the look. He got her up and into the back of his patrol car and then called a detective. The detective, we'll call her Shirley, arrived and started taking statements, then started knocking on doors in the neighborhood. Apparently, Karen has been scamming most of the newer people in my neighborhood for over a year for HOA dues. She was arrested for battery on law enforcement and resisting arrest, and is awaiting the state attorney's office to build a felony case for her HOA scam. Since she has money and she is not a local and a definite flight risk, she is being held on an insanely high bail. Woman stops to guilt trip me because she thinks I won't keep the forest clean. So I live in my van, and I'm currently camping in Tonto National Forest. Today I found a nice quiet spot on the side of a forest road and plopped down there. I have a clean rig, white Ford E350 van and a silver cargo trailer, solar, Starlink, etc. I'm clean shaven, and don't dress like I'm homeless. Shortly after I arrived, a truck with an older couple pulled in past me and got out to pick up trash about 50 feet away. They were not in a Forest Service vehicle nor wearing any clothing showing they were part of the Park Service. I clean up the trash other people leave behind, so I didn't think much of it. They stayed about 10 minutes and then drove back out. As soon as they were going past me, they stopped and the woman got out. I was sitting next to my van on my phone reading Reddit. She walked straight up to me and said, "Beautiful, isn't it? You're going to clean up after yourself, right?" Now, I'm not a litter bug and I didn't have a mess there. There seemed to be no reason for this interaction, and her tone seemed shockingly condescending. You know, like a mother talking to a child. I was a little taken aback. This felt very confrontational. I replied with sarcasm, "Hello to you too. No, I figured I would leave the place a disaster and try to burn down the forest in the process." She answered, "You say that, but people do that. You won't, right?" I admit I got rude. I replied, "I really don't appreciate the guilt trip you're laying on a complete stranger just trying to relax in the forest. It sounds like you have an axe you're grinding, so even if I say I will clean up after myself, you probably won't believe me anyway. Please leave." She thought for a second, then turned around and went back to the truck. When she got in, I heard her say to her partner inside, "He just wants to be an asshole." Then they drove off. Yeah, I could have been nicer, but I felt like this was uncalled for. Alright everyone, that's it for today's stories. Thank you for watching, I appreciate it. Be sure to drop a like and subscribe for more Reddit content. So take care, I'll see you next time.